Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Join us each week as sports scientist and founder of Athletica.ai, Dr. Paul Laursen, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Marjaana Rakai, coach and cyclist Paul Warloski, and everyday athletes discuss training, racing, and improving health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. Today, we are honored to have as our guest the Primal Swede, Erik Olsson, an athlete and coach who has done a lot of different events and developed a unique way of looking at motivation and purpose in endurance sports. Erik, can you tell us about your athletic background and what initially got you into the adventure of endurance sports?
Actually, if I go further back in my history, it's actually like zero. I have like no background in sports. I didn't grow up like in a family where they did sports. I had my brother. He did some football or soccer. And that was, fair. That was basically about it. So I didn't have any background in, in these areas or anything. I usually, spent my time watching television and drinking sodas, and that was like during my teenage years, right? So that's my background. So we were talking a bit like the Northern heritage, with the four of us. But I'm actually half Spanish. So I lived in Spain for a while, and this kind of opened up to me an interest in other cultures and exploring and discovery and stuff, right? So when I grew up, I decided, okay, so I want to live in Spain. Let's move to Spain. So I lived in Spain for a while. And then I studied political science and international relations. And I found myself living in Japan and in Taiwan and in New Zealand and in Belgium and traveling all over the place, right? So that kind of got me into traveling and seeing new things. But then, to make a long story short, I suppose, somewhere around 2010, I was studying and I had done some kind of adventure events, sort of, with my dad. So when I grew up, we actually did the hike, the Camino de Santiago, which I recently just finished again. I just came back this Saturday, like 2 days ago. And I had done that a few times, and that is sort of, you bike from Sevilla, Spain to northwest Spain, about 1,200 and I had done the walk a few times. So that's kind of got me into endurance, super low intensity. And when I did those things, and I had finished my studies at the university back in 2010, that is like 14 years ago, I kind of wanted to explore further. What am I capable of? So I took the decision that, okay, I will see if I can bike from Sweden, Gothenburg, where I live, down to Gibraltar, UK, kind of south of Spain. And I did that back in 2010. And that was a journey, about 3 months, 5,000 kilometers. I took my time. I didn't have like an endurance idea of it, but it was a wonderful experience that sort of transformed me, like a transcendental experience. So when I got back, I tried to get into my normal routines, work, studies, and all of these things, right? But after a while, I felt there's something off. Something is not right anymore. There's something, I don't know what it is. I can't understand it. Something is off. And I started to see that it is actually the thing that I'm in an office or I'm studying somewhere like inside the building and I feel like claustrophobic. It's kind of difficult to take a bike and journey for 3 months. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the freedom to actually do these things. What can I do instead? So that was actually, back in 2010. And I thought we had the winter season coming, so maybe I should, buy a pair of skis and do cross-country skiing. I don't know, let's try it. So I bought these skis and I started to ski. And I remember the very first event was like a half marathon, 21K. I was out and I sort of discovered what I'm capable of. So, when the winter eventually was finished and spring came and summer came, I can't ski anymore. Obviously, there's no snow. What can I do instead? I don't know, maybe I can run. So I bought these like super cheap shoes, like in a local store for like 10 euros or $10 or something. And I started to run. Right? So then I did that for about 500 kilometers in those super cheap shoes. And I did more of it, right? So that's sort of where my story is begun. So no experience. I just kind of self-discovered the world of endurance sports.
A bit of Forrest Gump there.
I am. I'm the Swedish Forrest Gump.
There's so much to unpack there, but I can relate to some of the feelings that you had. Like I grew up cross country skiing, and I wanted to discover what am I capable of. Yeah. But then I heard myself. So I have a little bit different background from you. But when you said that you did these amazing endurance events and then you went back to your normal life in the office and you started feeling claustrophobic and you just crave that discovery of what you're capable of, I can so relate to that. Like I moved from Finland to Norway because I quit cross-country skiing. And I felt the same way, like I had to go and discover something else and challenge myself in another way. I knew how to speak Swedish, but Norwegian is a little bit different. So, like learning a new language, studying and working, and it was just like, it gave me the challenge. But after a while, like working in accounting, I started to feeling claustrophobic again. So I needed to find something else. So like finding your limits and finding your purpose, like the endurance sports is so wonderful. It can create a venue for you to discover that. So of all of those endurance events that you've done, what are you most proud of?
There are so many. I mean, we have the Gothenburg Half Marathon. It's the largest half marathon in the world. We have like 65,000 participants, maybe 48,000 actually do the race. Right? And I remember the first time I saw them, and this was like pre bike packing down to Spain, right? So I didn't understand it. Like, why are they running? What's the problem? And some people had these costumes and things, right? And that's just mad. Why? But then when I started to do these things, okay, maybe I get it. Like now I've done like 10 times. I've done it 10 times, So it is an accomplishment, and I feel proud that I actually did those races 10 times. But then again, okay, so I have a few races. I've done like 30 plus, I don't know, lots of races, right? I think 2015 I did my first ultra run, so that's 90k. It's Ultra Vasan. It's actually a cross-country ski race. It's also one, like, it's a big one, 15,000 participants, wintertime, right? You can run this summertime. So I thought, okay, I want to be an ultra runner. And during the same time, I had, okay, so maybe, maybe triathlon, that's interesting. Maybe triathlon, that could be a cool thing to try. But, and they're like half triathlon, different distances and all of these things, right? But maybe an Ironman is, maybe I should do an Ironman. So I did Ironman in 2016, while 1 week before I just finished crossing Iceland, bike packing across the Icelandic high plateau. So I did two things during this same period. And obviously I feel proud, and always when I do these things, I'm always curious of who I will become when I actually finish the race, because I'm never the same person. I'm kind of more of myself. What am I most proud of? Maybe all of them. Maybe the first half marathon, like the little step, and then it's just been more and more and more.
Do you ever miss the first first time, like when you didn't know that this is possible for you, and you had those doubts, and you were asking yourself, like, this sounds crazy, like, can I even do this? Yeah. Do you ever miss those, the first half marathon, the first time doing a ski marathon, or whatever?
Yeah, kind of. I see the allure. I see the not the benefits, but the attraction of doing shorter distances as well, I say, so I was down now in Spain a few weeks ago, a month, maybe 2 months ago, and I did my first like ultra cycling event, like in a race. So that was from Madrid to Barcelona in Spain, 700k, and I finished that in 48 hours, 17 minutes, right? So that is like, for me, that's a big thing. But I say it's sort of equally alluring, it's equally attractive in a sense to do like the Gothenburg half marathon again. But now and that's 21k. I know I can do 21k. me, even if I have some injury, I could walk 21K. I can do it. While I'm aiming to take it to the next level all the time, I feel I still appreciate the simpler races. So the races I already have done, like a half marathon or a marathon.
And you're coaching some other athletes. Are your athletes doing shorter distances, first timers? Can you talk a little bit more about who you coaching and how your extensive experience in pushing your own limits can help you as a coach?
It's kind of diverse. I have to say it is anything from the first marathon, like we have a big marathon in the city, right? So we have lots of people doing it. So we have lots of people looking for coach or support or help to some extent, right? So it's anything from like a 21K. So I had a few people I've been helping that are doing like backyard ultra sort of racing, right? I haven't done that. So there is a big diversity of people pushing the limits. Essentially, so what do I do? Like, my main task, is I see it as a coach, is to help them with like the mindset. And then I am using Athletica.ai as a platform. So I think like kind of the details, high intensity interval training and all these things, it's sort of taken care of. So what I find is it's mostly about the mindset, right? So I help people with how can you think, how can you overcome, what do you do when you face these obstacles? And it's kind of, in that sense, it's based a lot, obviously, on my own personal experience. I tend to maybe share stories about, what I did when something happened to me, or how I think. Because, and the things I put on, say, social media and stuff about my coaching tends to be about mindset.
Yeah, on your website, Erik, you
Yeah.
talk a lot about those primal concepts to guide your life. I mean, is that what you're talking about with that mindset?
Absolutely. So it's kind of divided up, like like the primal. What is the Primal Swede? The primal, obviously, I'm Swedish, but what is primal? And I've been working with the idea of primal for a long time. And at first, it was mostly about nutrition, kind of a paleo approach. And yes, indeed, I also helped athletes, kind of the same thing, but I mostly talked about nutrition, right? And then it sort of developed into something different. So now, sure, I talk about nutrition as well, but I find that the biggest challenge most athletes have, it is mindset, So I talk about nutrition. It's like one part, it's one pillar. And the second pillar and what I do is kind of, okay, so how can you push your limits, which is not necessarily like endurance training. Okay, so we have cold water immersion, we have the sauna experience, we have breathing techniques, we have Wim Hof, we have something I really enjoy to do, especially wintertime, and that is kind of it is cold air exposure, I suppose, but you do like trail running just in shorts and trail shoes, but no t-shirt, anything. Midwinter, it can be like -5 degrees Celsius, and I think that is, you learn a lot while you do these things. You learn that there is no harm, there is no danger. You can actually push your own limits, and you discover lots of things about yourself. So that's kind of a second pillar. And then the third pillar, again, it's kind of the mindset. Okay, but then what do I mean by that? I think what I mean is, what I find when you do these things, when I do these things and I push my limits, physical and mental limits, I bikepack across the United States, I sort of discover my potential. I discover what I'm capable of. So in a sense, the Primal Swede is about personal development. It's about being active rather than, which is also good, but rather than you have a coach and you talk about mindset and you sit somewhere and you listen and you do some yoga, right? Okay, that's cool. But what if you do a half marathon instead?
I love it. I love it. So yeah, I've just kind of been reflecting and listening to this point, Erik, and I didn't know when I first looked at your name, just like you kind of said, the first thing I thought of when I saw the word primal was, Erik's a paleo guy. He's a nutrition guy. But the more I've listened from your Forrest Gump story, ultimately, is this is what my colleague Alex Hutchinson, from who's nicknamed Sweat Science, he does a lot of writing. A lot of people will know about him. He's writing a book right now on adventure, but I think it kind of comes back to that, and it's the primal origins of adventure and discovery, and then mindset as well. And this is, I love how you've kind of, this is like, there's something that's in our DNA that's kind of, it's, we're all searching for happiness or discovery in this life, right? And when we go and step outside and of our comfort zone and seek adventure and have adventure, we do personally develop. And I think that's what you've discovered. I know that's what I discovered time and time again. My first Ironman, my race across America, and addicted to it. So I did it twice with a team, and on and on it kind of goes, right? Like there's something there's something in me primally that I get satisfaction out of doing that. And if I don't, I start to get saddened and depressed. And so I can totally understand what it is that you do, what you help people with, Erik. So thank you.
It's like cold water immersion. I know we talked a bit about that, Paul, when you were on my podcast, right? So what I really enjoy to do when it's winter, the ground is covered in snow, I head to the lake, there is a hole, and I put on this kind of Norse music, right? Which is very fitting. So yeah, sure, if you watch the series like Vikings or something, you sort of get an idea what that is about, but you get this kind of mood, this rhythm, this tune, right? And it's a very kind of a primal sense. It gives you something. And I put on that music and I do cold water immersion, and I think it sort of helps to reconnect with nature, to be grounded. And yeah, so that's kind of the aura I want to portray to people as well, so they get the kind of idea that, okay, this is something different. It's not kind of a paleo coach. It's rediscover your inner roots and what you are capable of.
That's so beautiful. I don't want to totally, take over this interview, but as a Nordic person that left my beloved Norden, Norway and Finland and Sweden, I find like so much home in your story. Like as a mom of 3 living in, everywhere around the world, I've missed that Nordic element of being uncomfortable, because life in Nordic countries, it's not like in States. Like here, everybody wants the comfort, and you get lost in that. Like when you chop wood or you carry water, you do like basic elementary things, primal things to survive. You're very much connected to the nature. And I've missed that in my life so much. When I started doing triathlon and running marathons and stuff, part of it was to get really uncomfortable and really uncertain what I am capable of. And I just so relate to your story and what you're doing. And is there a limit for you?
What do you mean, like events and stuff?
Events, like what is the biggest thing that you can figure out? Like, because it sounds to me like you find these incredible adventures and challenges. Have you found the next big one that scares you a little bit?
Indeed. I do say this, that my philosophy in training and fitness, and I believe maybe you share this, it's kind of, I want to have a lifestyle where I'm able to do, say, an Ironman at any point, right? I want to, like, it should always be like a high fitness level, like built into my lifestyle, right? So I do my morning sessions, strength at the gym, and in the evening I do cycling and so on. So I want to like have a sort of a functional fitness level. I'm not saying I'm going to win an Ironman, right? That's not a thing, but I want to be able to actually execute one and do one. So next level thing, like a few years ago, I regarded myself as a runner. Like now I regard myself as a cyclist, like an ultra cyclist. And I do have an aim, and that is to participate in the World Championship in ultracycling. When I don't know, like I said, 2025. Will it be 2025? I don't know, but I said 2025. But I'm humble, right? You never know what can happen. Family, friends, fitness, and all of these things. But it would be like an amazing thing. It's I know like, usually it is in Poland, and it's I don't have the numbers in my head, right? But it's like 4,000 kilometers or something, and it's you have unsupported or supported. However, I do feel at this stage cycling is what I do. I am a cyclist. I love ultra cycling. I love to be on the saddle. Like now I just finished an 800k hike in Spain, but that's another beast. That's kind of every day you walk 32k and you interact with other people, and it's you have culture. It's not a beast entirely, but this cycling, which I find when I'm on a saddle and just go and just push, and hour after hour after hour after hour after hour of the day. That is something weirdly fascinating. So I want to do more of that, obviously. But as I say, it's kind of a lifestyle. Okay, so if this is the kind of one of the big goals, yeah, obviously, but it's not the only one. Maybe, or actually during that journey, I want to do like an Ironman here, an Ironman here, an ultra run here, maybe 21k here. Just fill my life with these events, right?
Erik, I'm kind of, having coached several people who do Ironmans and seen the amount of training that takes. That's a heck of a commitment in terms of time. I mean, how do you balance training with the other commitments in your life? Work, family, social activities. I mean, how do you balance all of that?
Yeah, I was almost to say like I don't have any, but that's not really true either. So yeah, that is tricky. Obviously. So I want to stay humble in front of that as well. So what I try to aim for, if I have a week of fitness and training between say 7 hours upwards, I'm very satisfied with that. If I have 10 hours, that's awesome. If I have 15, that's perfect. When you do cycling, you tend to be able to put lots of hours on the saddle. It's kind of, on a Sunday you bike 5 hours. So it's easier in a sense, rather than when you run. Maybe you run, for 2 hours. So the volume you're able to put in tends to be lesser. When you are a cyclist, you tend to be able to put in more. But then again, I'm humble. If I miss a session, 2 sessions or 3 sessions, that's okay. That's okay. I don't want to push it. And also, this is an important distinction. I'm not aiming for, the top 10 positions, right? I'm not aiming to win. Maybe one day I change my mind and I want to actually be on the top position. That's awesome. But at the moment, that's not the ideal. That's not the goal. So if I have this idea, I think it's easier. I experience it as easier. I can just participate in a race. I can enjoy the race. I can get the value out of the race. Maybe I do an Ironman in, say, Spain next time. I can travel to Spain, and after the race, I can do some discovery and exploration and stuff in Spain. And then I go home, I recover, and I can continue, right? So what I want to say is like the burden is not so heavy.
Lagom.
Lagom, that's like a super good Swedish word. I train Lagom.
So explain to Paul's and our listeners what Lagom means.
Can you even explain that? Like in Lagom is kind of it's a good Swedish word. I don't think there is like a perfect translation, but it kind of means like perfectly in the middle, right? But it's Lagom. There's no stress about it. Kind of a midway thing. Not too much, not too little.
Balance is good word.
Balance.
Balance doesn't really get the essence of lagom. It's like a Swedish way of thinking as well. Like Swedes are known for their laid back attitude within like the Nordic cultures. Swedes are the relaxed, no worries, no stress, a little bit like Jamaicans. And lagom is such a great word that can describe a Swedish person and their philosophy in life. So we have 3 endurance coaches here. Do you have anything that you want to ask us?
So what I find to be difficult sometimes is the balance which we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
So even though the Swedes are the Jamaicans of Europe, I do find it difficult sometimes, because you have these goals, right? And you have this session, and it's super important to have this session, and sometimes you have to skip it, and that's okay. But in order to reach where you want to reach, you can't skip too many. I'm not sure if I have a question per se, but maybe it's kind of more like, but how do you resonate when you find it's difficult to keep your schedule together in order to reach where you want to go, because there's so many other things in life? I don't have a coach. So how do you balance your lives?
I want to thank you for really like bringing back that lagom, like the balance, because I'm actually writing a blog post about how to balance life with training. I have 3 kids who are at the point where they don't need like 24-hour surveillance anymore. Like I sent my boys to the gym right now so that they are not here and making noise. I do a lot of multitasking, and that's how I get them done. So I stack up, for example, podcast listening or researching with the trainer right inside. I run when my kids go to activities, or if I can't run, I do some strength work. And I'm always like thinking how I can maximize my time, because we only have 12 hours, 14 hours a day to be effective. But it is always a struggle, and sometimes I need to be better at recognizing when things are too much. And I think is it the world marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge? He said the most important vitamin is vitamin no. So saying no to things is especially hard for me, but I'm trying to cultivate saying no. I can't do this at this moment, but once this clears out, I can come back to it.
I think that was really well said, and we actually spoke quite a bit about this with Cindy Maloney's podcast when we interviewed her, because she's extremely efficient at getting her sessions done, and I think she's got things sort of planned out ahead of time, which is great to have, and she's quite efficient, as Marjaana was sort of saying, with her actions, in terms of she might get some social time because she's training with someone else that's doing wants to do a similar sort of session, so she gets her social time there and her balance from that. She might run to work and these sorts of things, right? So always being efficient with that. But all that being said, you got to go with the flow, and you've got to recognize when something just isn't going to get done, or you don't want to do that session, and there's got to be that little voice in your head that you need to listen to, and just say no. Need some log on time at this point, or whatever, right? So
yeah, I think there's also that element of consistency, of getting, what I often tell my athletes is something is better than nothing, and getting something in every day so that you're consistent, or every other day, or something, so that if you're really busy, you're still doing a little something every day. What are your challenges, physically, mentally, emotionally? What makes those things challenging to you?
Yeah, it's first, thanks for sharing the input about the question, right? I asked lots of value there, and then Paul, it's like I see that I fight, or my biggest challenge is my own mindset. I see that as that had been my experience. I was not aware of that necessarily at the beginning when I did like my first half marathons and these things. I just kind of pushed it and did it, but after a while, I started to see a pattern. Right? I see a pattern. So what is this pattern? Well, I started to see the pattern when I started to realize that before any race, essentially any race, I kind of always, I either get sick or I have an injury, right? am I sick? Do I actually have an injury? I don't necessarily believe I do, but I discovered like a trait of hypochondria, right? So I'm not sure what that is. I think that's kind of a fear for something. Maybe it's fear of, as I say often when I have athletes and on social media, maybe it's a fear of actually succeeding and discovering that I am capable of doing something. Maybe it's also a fear. It can be fear of failure, obviously, right? Either one or the other, maybe both. So I've been, sometimes I remember I did like Vasaloppet. That's a 90K cross-country ski race in Sweden, and one of these times I've done it a few times. I take the train and head up to the north, and I feel like my throat is all this sore and pain, right? So I eat raw garlic on the train. Maybe there's a smell in the cabin, but I don't know. I just need to do something. But then when I actually do the race, it's usually fine, And then I don't know. It's like before walking the Camino. So I have had a knee injury, I believe. I have had back problems, I believe. Like a part of one of the reasons I actually did the Camino this time was to rehab and see, can I do this anyway? And I walked the Camino, 800 kilometers, and I have basically like 0 issues. So what is that? Why do I put these things on top of myself? While I do these things, I can also see that I have never canceled one single race. I've always successfully completed everything I set out to do. But still, each and every time, I have this kind of, can I? I don't know. I have an injury. I'm sick. I'm like, I can't. And it's always kind of limiting me somehow.
That's part of what makes it so beautiful when you actually do accomplish them, though, don't you think? If you didn't have that doubt in the back of your mind, then it wouldn't be as rewarding.
Yeah, but it's really strong, So it can be like an injury, like in my knee. I have an injury in my knee. I can physically feel it, but then when I do these things, it's fine. It's like why, like what? But then of course, I cross that boundary. Right? I see that it's possible, and I discover something about myself, and then I start to learn. I'm learning now after this Pedalma race and after the Camino that if that is the case, okay, stay humble. Feel what's the situation today and all of these things. I do strength training and yoga and all of these things, but probably it's still a mindset thing. Probably I will be able to succeed anyway. Yeah,
I love that, Erik. So I'm going to summarize a few of the things that I heard in this conversation. I really loved it, and really, thankful for you coming on here, Erik. Your nickname is the Primal Swede, and I think really everything, kind of rotated around this whole primal instinct in us, and it's a primal instinct we don't think about often, but it's a primal need for adventure, for experience, for challenge in our life. And if we don't get this, we're not that happy. And I even kind of you were at a moment of describing these the multiple different adventures that you've had, and you get to the end of one and you almost kind of like you did that, and it's like, well, now what, right? And we just go back into this process again. And I think those of us that have done multiple Ironmans or ultra cycling races, mountain bike race, whatever, running races, we all experience this. So there is this primal need for that in us. This is why there is a primal need for products like Athletica to throw that in there too. But it's there's this thing where we need to break down these seemingly physical barriers at first, but they're only mental barriers. And when we do when these do actually get broken, it's quite an emotional response. You actually, you even mentioned about it brought tears to your eyes one of the times that you've done that, and I've experienced that as well. So, but this is all part and parcel, I think, of us as humans. Those of us that don't challenge ourselves to do this, we run the risk of getting depressed. At least in some of us are type A personalities, and I guess go towards all those various different primal instincts. and including cold water immersion, breathing, heat and sauna, travel, adventure, movement, all of these things. So think big, everyone. And if you need a life coach to help you with these sorts of personal experiences and personal developments, Erik is your man, and we'll include his links so that you can reach out to him.
That is all for this week. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for the Athletes Compass podcast. Ask your training question in the comment and in our social media. Thank you for taking a moment to give us a 5-star review. Paul, Marjaana, and I are professional endurance coaches with some limited availability, so contact us for an appointment. For Erik Olsson, Marjaana Rakai, and Dr. Paul Laursen, I'm Paul Warloski, and this has been the Athletes Compass podcast. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform, Athletica.ai. And thanks.